So this is step 5. That means we're in week 6. This is the week leading up to Thanksgiving break, which is great. But as I warned earlier, and if you look at the syllabus itself, uh, you can't really call it week 7. I called it fall break week on the last page of the syllabus. But if you look at week 7, which follows, look, there's a few things due. One of those is a 10-minute presentation. And because of the lack of actual classroom, what I ask as a minimum is you guys put together a 10-minute presentation with what's known as speaker's notes, like what you would have said. And we'll talk about that here in the class, or in the video, excuse me. So that's what you're going to submit. Now, I have had students in the past, a couple at least, do a webcam, kind of like what I'm doing here, where you record yourself while you're talking about your presentation. Okay, so it's a 10-minute presentation on any topic of your choosing, and we're going to actually look at, there's 2 worksheets this week. One is time management. I call it the time management and multitasking worksheet, and you're going to find out as we go through this, I think multitasking is complete bunk. It's a myth. You can switch between tasks. You can watch the little kid do your laundry, cook dinner, but you're switching between those 3. You're not doing all 3 at the same time. And cognitively, to have your brain do 2 difficult tasks at the same time, there are a few people that can do that, but they're 1 in a million. So get the idea of, oh, I can put things off, I can multitask. Well, what usually happens is you procrastinate and then you do 6 things very poorly, and you call that multitasking. So what I want to do, look, I think the textbook, it's fine. You know, we kind of condensed down and got rid of some of the extraneous material, but what it doesn't do, in my humble opinion, is talk about multitasking until too late. And so that's why you saw in previous videos, it may hint at it in the text, but we spent a lot of time on time management thus far. And so I hope that helps both with doing better in the class, and now when we get to the time management multitasking worksheet, it'll make more sense. Okay, so we're going to start out with a review. I don't have any tech time. It's a miracle. With a revisiting of a review of time management. Okay, and you may see me looking around. I just had a cataract taken out of my eye, so my one eye is kind of wigging. But I think I'll survive. So I just said this, it is a review. Time management is important. I think we should do it sooner in the text. Oops. You know what happened here is I moved the box over to put my notes in, and so my numbers are skewed. So rather than leave it wrong, let's do this. Let's fix it, because, we want this to be correct. So we looked at this Eisenhower box. And see what happened. He's out of control. In one of the previous videos. And the idea was we talked about urgent and important. Important being something that can have profound effect on your success. Heck, it could be, all the way up to something that affects your life. Whereas urgent was time. So important has a hierarchy of, for lack of a better word, importance to you. Whereas urgent was more about time, right? And hence time management. So the idea was to work as much as possible in quadrant 2. It's important. It's above the important, non-important line, but it's not due for a week or a few days at least. So get it on your schedule, get started. Because if you wait till the do it now, it's both important and it has to be done now. If there's 5 or 6 things in that box, they're not going to get done. If there's only 1 or 2, that's kind of how normal life works, is you try to get a few things done ahead of time, and every once in a while stuff will slide over here. Now sometimes that's not just a procrastination issue, it's just I can only accomplish so much in a given day. All right, but if it's only a few things over here, those can usually be tackled fairly well. So try to live in quadrant 2. And then we talked about, Eisenhower said if it's urgent, something has to be done, but it's not important, delegate it. If you're the boss, say, hey, Joe, you need to get this done. And then if it's both not important and not urgent, can we eliminate it? Is it just a waste of time? Right? And that can unload that list if you're a list maker. It's get rid of a few things that don't matter. We ask where procrastinators live, and that's there. And their life can be chaotic. So I asked that before. Who lives in quadrant one and what's it like? And I think, honestly, not to go off on a tangent immediately, this thing can both help and hurt. But it seems to me that with the phone, with the cell phone, we tend to let ourselves slide over into the do it now. And so that's why you see people constantly on the phone. Instead of making a plan of, here's what I need, you're driving home, hey, what do we need from the grocery or whatever it is. Again, once in a while, no big deal. But if you're doing that every day, doesn't that add a level of chaos? And if you go back to that Zeigarnik effect, that there's something sitting here that I need to get done and I keep putting it off, that also adds to stress. Okay? So I asked this question, and again, is there a difference? Schedule what you want to get done and then adjust. So schedule daily, weekly, and then adjust hourly perhaps, but build your schedule based on what's important to you, right? The priorities are what's above that line. So that's the excuse me, proactive approach. Now, on the day of, when things change, you may have to go into reactive mode, but at least you started the day with a plan, or the week with a plan, so that it's not just chaos. If you have a plan and have to react, you know where you're deviating from the plan. If you're just winging it all the time, it's chaos. And I heard from a couple of you, the discussion, actually, I think it was a quiz question. It might have been on the midterm itself, about a couple things you've learned in college success so far. Student success. See, I'm still doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. That a few of you have actually gone out and purchased one of these kind of old school planners to try to get your act together to help you with that. So again, it's fine. It may be a little bit cumbersome, but if it works, you get in the habit first, but it works for you, keep using it. And I think you'll find it helps. I was pleased to see some fashion, either on the phone or a planner like that. So tips. This is where we've seen the tips in black, but you're going to see what's in red on the time management and multitasking worksheet. So that's where they come from. That's why I put them on there. It's not just some random thing I pulled out of the air. As you look at it, it's what's called a Likert scale. And actually, I'm going to pull that up here when I finish this slide so we can look at it. But you've done these surveys probably your whole life. A Likert scale means like a 1 to 5, right? 1, it's not at all like me. 5, it's exactly like me. When you do surveys, just kind of an aside here as a tip, make sure you understand what the scale is actually telling you. Because I can reverse it. I can make 1 is exactly like me, 5 is not at all like me. So just understand which way the numbers go and what they mean to you. Okay? Are you always rushing to finish? Is your workspace a mess? I'm not going to get out the camera. Mine's not super clean, but I don't know. It doesn't really affect me. Some people can work with a little bit of clutter. Some people, like in garages, you walk in, you're like, dude, how can you get anything done? I don't know. They just can work that way. If you can't, don't let it get messy. Focus and sleep, overwhelmed by information, right? Jotting things down perhaps. And this idea of do not multitask, that came from the tips. And again, I get a lot of pushback when I talk about this in class. And that's fine. I mean, you're certainly entitled to your opinion, but I've done more than a little bit of research on multitasking and how it doesn't work. So we're going to go through and, fun-ish. I've got a link to a couple video games where you're actually multitasking. And if you try it, you're going to find, 1, it's difficult, if not impossible. And 2, by the end of maybe 45 or a minute of doing it, 45 seconds or a minute, your brain's going to hurt because the brain just doesn't like doing it. Learn how to say no, right? To friends, to family, to kids. If you've got enough on your plate, you don't need to add more. And especially at work, if we figure out, Jenny over here will do it if we tell her or ask her to, hey, can you help me out on this? All of a sudden now Jenny's plate is doing her job and your job. So reverse that. If it's you and somebody comes up to you and says, hey man, can you help me out? Once in a while, sure, right? We're all in this together. But if they're trying to load your plate with their job, the answer is no. Do it yourself. That's a hard thing to do. It's easy to say, it's hard to do. And remember too that the cognitive brain power we have, the ability to keep focus. It doesn't last forever. There's times where you've got to take a break and know when you work best. Early, midday, in the evening, at night. So yeah, my head's in the way. This is a link to that multitasking game. And what you'll see, there's actually there's a couple, three of them, but it has to do with, there's 4 screens and you're doing something in each one, and it starts out real simple. It's a balance beam and there's a ball on it. And so all you're trying to do is keep the ball in the middle, and you use the left and right arrows on your keyboard. But after about 10-15 seconds, it stops, and then another task comes in, and this time you're trying to move a block to stay out of the way of the airplanes that are shooting back and forth. If you get through that, then another one comes up and you go over to the WASD buttons. And so for the gamers, you may be pretty adept at those keys. I can do the back and forth up and down, but when I get to WASD, it starts kicking my butt. So try it. Is it a true test of multitasking? It's really a test of how quickly you can cross-check between 2, 3, 4 different boxes. But it kind of illustrates my idea that multitasking is a myth. So you can give it a try if you want. That's the link will take you to it. Okay, this is again something I do in class, but you can do it at home as well. And just follow through. Multitasking is a myth. It does not work. Is that subjective? Of course it is. But what we're going to do is we're going to write that sentence down. And then if you read through it, you're going to count the numbers. So you write the sentence first. Multitasking is a myth. It does not work. And then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you count up the number of letters used. Not spaces, just the letters. Okay? And when I do this in class, I'll get my timer ready. So if you want to do it, go ahead and get your timer ready. And you can do it a couple times. You'll get a little bit quicker. But kind of here's what I mean. So you write that sentence, and then as soon as you're done with that, go back and start counting up the letters involved. And I know those don't match exactly, but you get my point. And as soon as you finish with whatever number the letter K is in work, click, that's when you stop the clock. See how long it takes you. Okay? And pause it right here if you want to try it, because I'm going to keep going on to the second half of this test. So pause. Right, moving on. Part 2 is the same sentence. Multitasking is a myth that does not work. You can do this on the same piece of paper. When you're ready, you start the timer, but this time you're going to write down M, and then you're going to write down the number 1, U, 2, L, 3, T, 4, I, 5. See what I mean? You're going to jump back and forth between the sentence and the numbering of the letters. So something like this. Oops. And guess what? 99% of the time, this part 2 takes significantly longer for students to do. So again, if you want to pause it right now, go ahead and try it. Time yourself. As soon as you get to K and whatever the number was, then stop the clock. And I bet most of you are going to find it takes you longer. The reason why is it's because you're not just writing the sentence and then going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So your brain's focused on lettering and then numbering. Here you're jumping back and forth. So it takes that split second to kind of change your mentality. M, 1, U, 2, L, 3. And it takes longer. Now, does that demonstrate multitasking is a myth? Maybe, maybe not. The idea is, though, that as you change your focus, if you remember that Stroop's test, where you said what the color was, not the word, it's tough, because your brain's a funny thing as to how it works like that. Okay? So, just another kind of quasi-illustration. I understand you can vacuum and let the noodles boil, but you're switching between those tasks. So I don't consider that multitasking as much as switch tasking, if you want to give it a name. Okay, so what's next on the hit parade? Yes, let's look at the topic outline. Actually, first let's go to the multitasking worksheet, and then we'll look at the topic outline worksheet, because this, I'm trying to combine step 5, week 6, again into 2, maybe a tiny bit longer, but 2 videos, so it's not as many as the first. Because look, I mean, if you look at the syllabus, we're drawing closer and closer to the finish line. All right, so what do I always say? Bear with me. right? I seem to say that a lot. Let me pull up the worksheets and we'll take a look at them. And I should have done this ahead of time, shouldn't I? Bad time management. All right, there's one. And there's the other one. Okay. The time management multitasking worksheet. That's the first one due, and I'll put the dates in Blackboard as to when they're due. But do that one first, and then, looking at it with all the pieces of all the discussion and all the test and quiz and midterm and everything else about time management and procrastination, I think, boo-hoo, I know this is going to kill you. I think we've covered enough of the procrastination and time management to not have to do a discussion board on it, right? So that means in week 6, step 5, we've got 2 worksheets and a quiz, and we'll have 2 sets of slides and videos, right? And I think that's sufficient to cover it. So here you go. Here's time management multitasking. And you saw these questions in red in the previous slides. So what you're going to do, rate your personal level of turmoil. That's my term, but it has to do with all the chaos in life. So let me blow this up a little bit. 1 to 5 Likert scale. Just talked about it, but make sure you read. 1 means this does not apply to me. That is nothing like me. And 5 means, phew, that sounds exactly like me. And oftentimes you're going to be somewhere kind of in the middle. So pick the number associated with, I feel like I have so much to do, I'm missing something in life. Nah, that's not like me. 1, that's exactly like me. 5. And you do the same thing all the way through. And then what I want you to do at the end is take the numbers and add them up into a total. And now I don't have a scientific breakdown if you have 15, if you have 30, if you have 45, but that number does correlate to the level of kind of chaos and stress in your life. And by doing that, the idea is you look at it and you go, is there something I can do? Can I work on those 5s and make them 4s, or the 4s and make them 3s? And so that's why I do this later when you understand a little bit more about time management. You do this at the beginning, I don't know that it would be worth a whole lot, right? And then a few more questions to answer. Top 5 things that take up time during the day. That doesn't have to be they waste time, but what uses up the clock during the day, right? And job is probably going to be one of them. School is probably going to be one of them. Top 5 things, okay? Are all of those time wasters? Why or why not? And then can some activities be both productive and a waste of time? Okay. And see what I mean here? List the 3 techniques to prevent wasting time in college and beyond, outside college. That to me kind of covers what we would in a discussion board anyway. So why duplicate the effort? And then here, look, if you think you can multitask, let me know when it is. Right? And I'll listen. I'll read it. I may disagree with it, but that's okay. We don't have to agree on everything. So that's the first one. And while I've got it up, I may as well, let's look at the topic outline worksheet. Again, let me blow it up a little bit. And what this is it's supposed to step you through the process of really building an outline. And this could work for a paper or, in our case, a 10-minute presentation. You can use really anything you want. You could build it as an outline on Word. Probably the easiest, and that's why we're going to spend a little time on PowerPoint, is PowerPoint. There's a program, an online PowerPoint, if you will, called Prezi. There's all kinds of different ways to present material to an audience. So pick which one you want, but I think you'll find learning something about PowerPoint will be helpful in future classes and outside the classroom as well. So let's just walk through what we're doing here. First, select the topic you'd like to learn more about. And oftentimes what people look at is their potential career vector, that I'm going into welding or cosmetology or whatever it is, and look at that. Now, when you start, much like a search in an electronic library, usually that topic is too big for a 10-minute presentation. As much as you'd be, I'm terrified, 10 minutes sounds like an eternity. You'd be amazed how quickly that goes when you're on stage. Okay, I'm going to pause for just a second and see you didn't even notice. Just checking if anybody was in our chat room. Second, what is the main idea you want to address? So you could remember the idea of, man, it's hard to come up with a title. Well, just think about the idea, careers in cosmetology. Maybe look at 2 or 3 different, that's a big, large, overarching umbrella. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Careers in welding, careers in whatever it is, right? And make that your overall thesis. And now what the idea is, right, there you go, the title, is list 3 main points that support. So careers in cosmetology, I'm way out of my element here. Let's go like careers in auto mechanics. You can talk about engine, transmission, and suspension. Now, as you look at that, in 10 minutes, can I cover all 3 of those? No way. So what about engine work in the realm of auto mechanics, and specifically looking at maybe compression test, ignition timing, what else? The lubrication system. So now, see how that kind of whittles down? I could probably talk about those 3 aspects of engine mechanics or engine maintenance in 10 minutes. But if I tried to cover engine, transmission, suspension, no way. Because what I would do is just say the word and I wouldn't have enough time to really elaborate. Because what you're trying to do here is explain something to the audience. And what I find is most of the time the audience is interested because I get a whole slew of different career choices out there. Being a paramedic, being a fireman, being a welder, and talking about that. So you can see this worksheet is really forcing you, or it's designed to force you into building an outline. Right, now this is the part where people kind of get tripped up. If my first main point on engine maintenance was engine timing, then you'd want to look at sub-points that talk about engine timing. What is top dead center? How do I adjust the timing of the ignition? Can I? If it's an electronic ignition, is there anything I can do about it? So those would all go to that first main point. So sub-points, think of them as detailed information, data, maps, charts, facts, things like that. Let's look at another potential. Let's say you are looking at a career in cosmetology. What I think 3 main points, good main points would be job opportunities, education required. Maybe that one would come first. The education required, job opportunities, and then look at pay, right? Pay, and the sub-points to pay are very easy in my mind. Local, state, national. If you stay, say, in Rome or in Dalton to do that, the pay rate's going to be X. But if you expand that, I'll go anywhere in Georgia or maybe the surrounding, if you're up toward Tennessee, then it may give you a better potential for pay. And if you go nationwide, there's probably areas that are short on cosmetologists, and maybe the pay would be even better there. Same with nursing, same with welding, same with anything. Right? So no matter what, if you pick a career and you go education required, job availability, and pay, and break those down, you've got a 10-minute presentation. And you know what else? You'll learn something about your potential future career by doing it. Maybe that's my point. And then the last part lists several references. And I don't want to see Google or Wikipedia. I mean, no kidding references like ASE Mechanics, a credible automotive website. Or, I have no idea. I'm sure there's some for cosmetology. I mean, just look at me. I have no concept of looking good. But you get the point. And these don't have to be, long MLA version references, just where you're going to go to get your information. So they're probably going to be websites, and that's cool. Right? So there's your topic outline worksheet. So looking at the syllabus, time management comes due earlier in the week and the topic outline a couple days later. So getting rid of the discussion board, we've got 2 sets of slides with videos, 2 worksheets, and a quiz, as always, at the end of that week. So that doesn't sound like a bridge too far for anybody. And of course, as always, if you have questions, just shoot them my way. Ask. Okay, so we did that. So now let's walk through I guess what you'd call a typical presentation. And then when we get to the end, what I've done on this video, and it's in the slides, is build kind of a quasi template, if you want to call it that. It's a set of slides that you're welcome to copy and paste into your own PowerPoint and then adjust them as necessary. I don't want to see 15 presentations about welding because that's what I built the template on. But you can use it and type in your own information, and it makes for a nice format. Okay, so let's do that into slideshow mode. So this is just a kind of a presentation. I've given this before, and it looks a little bit like the writing presentation with Mr. Smiley Face. That's where it comes from. Okay, so an opening slide. What am I going to talk about? This is what I'm talking about. Basics of oral presentations, right? It's not a speech. That's something it seems students, especially when they do this in class, they'll get overly nervous about it. One, you're standing up in front of the group, so I get it. Everybody's eyes are on you. But it seems to me like they feel like this has to be perfect, like a speech. It's not. It's a presentation to educate us on whatever topic you picked. And just thinking back, I've had some really interesting ones. I had one about crappie fishing. The guy was trying to get into that pro fishing realm. I've had ones about working for Snap-on Tools, job-based. I had one girl, this is a long time ago. This is early on when I started with GNTC. When I mentioned, and this was a classroom, I mentioned we were going to give a 10-minute presentation at the end, I could see her face turn beet red immediately, and she was way in the back. And every time I mentioned it, as it got closer, the same thing happened. So I talked to her. It's like, what's the deal? Are you terrified? She's like, man, I'd rather have my teeth pulled out than present in public. And so we talked about it, and I tried to get her to mellow out. It's not the end of the world. But I thought she did a really genius thing. Her topic was how to lower nervousness when public speaking. And so she went through and talked about 2 or 3 things that you can do. That you don't stare at people, you look at the tops of their heads, you practice a lot, things like that. And it ended up being a great presentation. And I saw her 5 years later. She was working for the school, and she had successfully, what's the term, man? I'm blowing it here. There's a competition for the trades and Skills USA. Phew, that took a while. She ended up competing at the national level in public speaking and won at the national level. And now she works for the school and goes out and talks to students about what school's like. All it took was breaking down that wall the first time. And she came in, she was dressed very professionally. She came into one of my classes and talked to him. Heck, she's a better speaker than I am now. Right? Anyhow, an aside. So there are these generic slides. They're not in Blackboard in this case. Well, they are, but they're at the end of this presentation. Right? So here it is, opening slide. What I'm going to talk about, who I am. Now, you don't have to go into such detail, but when you put that on the slide, you want to introduce yourself. Good afternoon, folks. My name is Dr. Mike Brakey. I'm from Georgia Northwestern Technical College, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the basics of oral presentation. That's a great start. Now they know who you are and what you're talking about. And if you want to put a little picture in there that kind of goes to what it is you're talking about, I think that's great. Pictures, graphics, things like that add a little zip to the presentation. The next slide should be, here's the main points. Remember that from the topic outline worksheet. Do's and don'ts, speaking versus writing, an example, and use of PowerPoint. And I put questions on there, again, to remind me, whenever I give a public presentation, most of the time it's to inform folks, and so, hey, do you have any questions? If you put that in your presentation, you won't forget to ask. Are there any questions? Just like, putting your name on the opening slide, you won't forget to introduce yourself. Okay, if you want to use some kind of little comedic icebreaker, that's fine. This one, it's kind of silly, but it's simple. If you want to tell a little joke, you can. Just be careful. You guys have all probably seen, the old crusty teacher who tries to tell a joke and it comes off terribly because he forgets the punchline. Or you may tell a joke that you think is the most hilarious ever written, but it's extremely offensive to a group of people. And look, I don't want to get into this whole everything offends me woke culture. I think it's way overblown. Have some thicker skin, but understand what the world's like right now. So I'm more apt to not, or just make it a very basic, stupid joke. Or just avoid it. If you're not comfortable doing that, skip it. There's no reason to. Okay, so what was that first main point? Do's and don'ts of presentations. This is a big don't. So I went in and I started farting around. And most people, when they get on PowerPoint, they're like, wow, look at this. Look what this can do. It can do all kinds of stuff as far as making the bullets come up. This is what's called an eye chart. Don't do it. It's way too much information. And when I first clicked it, all of that is a distraction. So what happens? You're up there and you throw this up on the screen. One, the audience in the back of the room, even in a small classroom, is not going to be able to read it. And two, when you put words on the screen, people start reading. That means they're not listening to you. So you want to use bullets. So they're short and sweet, and you take the bullet and then you elaborate on it. But you don't want it to look like that. Okay? So here's what we really want. One bullet at a time. No eye charts. And what I would do at that point, you might even take off some of that do not pack too much information, right? Or just leave it at that. No eye charts. Don't pack too much information. It distracts people. Just kind of what I did a minute ago, right? Audiences will be reading. And then I've set it up where each time I click the clicker, as I call it, another bullet will come up. One, it helps with tempo. Two, it helps you keep your train of thought because I'm talking to my bullets. And when you're doing this, of course, we're doing it, online. Don't, talk to the screen and ignore the audience. You can look at the screen once in a while, or most places you present, you're going to have a little screen in front of you like the instructors do, and you're going to be able to see what the audience sees right here. So you can just do one of these, screen, audience, back and forth, because you want to bring them in. Be neat. If you make a typo, they'll find it. You've seen in a couple of my videos, it's like nice typo. I don't even catch it till it's on the screen, and it's like, oh boy. That may be the only thing they remember. Use bullets. Get to the point. And all that's on the slide should support, easy for me to say, that point you're making. And those points should support the overall thesis. So if it's about your career, they should all be pointing back toward that career in some fashion. I don't like complex backgrounds. PowerPoint has all kinds of different backgrounds you can use. I prefer black and white. Just look, it's boring, yes, but I know you'll be able to read it. And if you notice the size of the bullets, the size of the text, make it big enough where folks in a large setting could see it. Okay? And I'm going to show you an example of a background that just doesn't cut it. Great picture, terrible background. Make it readable. 22, 24 font, the size of the letters themselves. Probably about as small as you want to go. So don't pack too much on a page. If you got a few bullets left over, make another slide. As they say, don't cost nothing, does it? Color and font. You can see the beginnings of the bullets here bolded. You can use color as well, but just be judicious. Don't use it on every slide because then it loses its impact. Illustrations. You've heard the saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So use graphs and charts to illustrate something. The thing I've seen, so be aware of, if you throw a chart up there, know exactly what it's saying. And also make note of where the information came from. I've told you guys this in other, if I show you a chart, you should look, is that a credible source? Is that, the Department of Defense? Or is it, Joe Bag of Donuts? So know what it's saying. Know what the X and Y axes mean. And what I've also seen is when you put a chart up, usually a bar graph or a line or something, that's easy to see. But when you take that and stick it in a PowerPoint, the labels on the X and the Y axis can be difficult to see. So either make those, blow those up if you can, or at least explain to the audience what we're looking at here, right? Cost of college over time. So explain that to them. Make eye contact. Pause. All right, shoot out the back door, maybe that'll help. One of the things I hear a lot is the eye contact piece is what makes people nervous. So again, tops of heads, maybe along the back wall, moving your eyes around, that can help. Don't get sucked into the screen. Don't get sucked into your notes. And I don't mind students, I tell them, starting off in a class like this, You can use notes. Note cards work well. If you're going to use note cards, I recommend you number them, because maybe you have 5 or 6, and sure enough, they'll either get mixed up in your backpack or you trip and they all fall on the floor. And now you're like, oh dear Lord, what order do they go in? So number them. And as you get better and better, you'll find you don't even need them. And I see this a lot. Students will bring in 4 or 5 note cards and they'll set them down on the desk and they'll hit go and they'll start doing their presentation and they never look at them. They're there. They can give you that little security blanket. Here's another thing that's not a foul. Say you're giving a presentation and you're like, your brain just, or you lose your train of thought for a second. Just pause, take a look at your notes, and then pick it back up. There's nothing wrong with that. But don't narrate those mistakes. Don't, you lose your train of thought, right? You go, oh man, I'm an idiot. Oh, this is terrible. And it happens, believe it or not. People kind of narrate their own mistakes. If you lose your, and then you pick it up again. You know what? Nobody will notice. Don't let them see you sweat. Okay? Hey, why did all those show up at once, right? Practice, practice, practice. That helps you, one, get less nervous, but remember, it's not a speech. So let's go back. Remember on the previous slides, I had them where every time I click, a bullet comes up. This one I didn't do that, so let me show you just as we go through. I'm going to end the show for a second. What we can do, a couple things with PowerPoint. Anytime I click on this box around the words, now that goes into a solid line, anything I do up here is going to affect everything in that box. Bigger, smaller, change the color. And to make the bullets come up one at a time, I know this is small, but you go to animations. And then again, see, nothing's lit up. But as soon as I click on the box around it, now there is. And so I can make them appear, fade, fly in. I tend to like fly in. And as soon as you pick one of these, and there's all kinds of them. Remember that first slide where stuff was flying everywhere? Just use a simple one. So if you go, hey, I want them to fly in, it'll give you a little demo. Here's what it's going to look like. Click, ding, 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 ding. So that means every time I hit the button on the clicker, it's going to bring up a bullet. And if you notice too, these are numbered. So let's say you go, you know what, I'd rather make this bullet number 1. You can do that. Just move it, drag it, and see how it renumbers it automatically. So that, to me, the animation is useful. It keeps you from making an eye chart, and it helps with tempo and delivery. Okay? And that's how you do it. And you can change. You go, no, I don't like that one. Let's float in. And now you see what happened there? Because I had the number 1 highlighted, that's the only one that did it. So if you got it all kind of dorked up, see how it goes to multiple? You can go none. And it gets rid of them. And now you go, you know what? I want them all to float in. There we go. And they float in order. Now you can bring them in on 2 or 3 at a pop. That's a little bit beyond the scope of this course. You can do it with timing. Generally, you're going to want each bullet to come up when you click. Either the space bar, the clicker, whatever it might be. Okay? So now look what happens. Because we did that, they didn't all show up at once. Because we had them floating in. Practice, practice, practice. If you have a time limit and you feel like, you look, when you start a presentation, let's go back. When you come into a room to give a presentation, look around and familiarize yourself with it. Where's the computer? Where's the clicker? Where's the screen? Where's the clock? Because if you've only got 15 minutes, you don't want to be yammering on for 30 minutes. And as you start your presentation, give a quick snapshot on the clock. Okay, it's 9 o'clock. I got till 9:15. And you start going and you go, geez, I'm only on slide 4 and I'm at 9:10. I need to pick it up. Well, don't just start motor mouthing. Maybe there's a slide or 2 in there that aren't as important to your topic. And had you guys seen me in class, there would be times where I would just skip over one because it wasn't that important. Okay? So kind of do that. And that's practicing will help. You'll know how much time you have. You run it through one time, it's like, geez, that was 40 minutes. I only have 30. We'll go back and take out a few slides. Practice it again. Get it where the timing is just about right. When you get into an classroom, an audience situation, the normal tendency is to start talking faster. And you almost don't realize it, but all of a sudden you get up there and you're like, I want to get off the stage. And all of a sudden the words just become a jumble. So almost force yourself to slow down just a little bit. I don't mean like that, but don't just ramble through it. Okay? Pace yourself. Practice helps. Speaking is different than writing, sort of. I mean, it's the same basic concept. That agenda, the intro, tell them what you're going to tell them. The body or the main points, that's where you tell them. And then you finish up with a summary. Tell them what you told them so that those main points are cemented in their minds one more time. But with a speech, or not a speech, a presentation, they only have that one chance to hear you. Now, granted, they could ask questions at the end. Hey, I heard you say X. Be prepared for those. Whereas in writing, if I don't understand, I can reread it a few times. Okay? So if you're presenting on a topic that has, especially in the medical field, some kind of crazy drug name, right? The stuff I'm taking for my cataract surgery, prednisone, acetate, ophthalmological solution. If you're going to talk about something that everybody in the audience is going to go, what the heck is that? Go ahead and just use that word of the day concept. Make sure they all understand what that baseline is. Here's what I'm talking about. Because if you confuse them early, they're not going to understand a thing you're talking about later. Okay? Be clear. And it depends. Sometimes, a more informal presentation, the audience can ask questions as you go. That's kind of up to you. If I'm giving a more formal presentation and someone puts up their hand, I'll be polite, but I'll say, let's hold questions to the end, please. And almost all the time that happens. Okay? Communicate effectively. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple, students. Get across those 2 or 3 main points. If you start yammering on, remember 45 minutes, about as long as people can focus. You're going to put them to sleep, and watch the audience. You'll be able to tell when you're boring them to tears. And I just said that last one. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them what you told them. Why should I listen? Make it interesting. Look, if you develop this presentation about your job or about fishing or about firemen, whatever it is, you know more about it than most of us because you developed it. So let that confidence come through. And if you bumble through it, but misspeaking, a little nervousness, that's okay. But, show some confidence. The blue star, I don't think I labeled this one. What is it? I don't remember. It's probably a really bad speech where the guy fumbles through a bunch of words. And if you've ever heard somebody do that, it lowers their credibility. Okay? They want to listen to you. Make it interesting, make it fun, but don't make it a comedy stand-up routine either. How can you get better? Notes. I talked about this. If you need them when you start, fine. Avoid the full page of notes. If you have something like that, what happens is you're going to get lost because it's so many words, and you know where your focus is? It's here. So that's why I say note cards at least. And then as you get better, get rid of them. You'll find that with bullets you can talk about whatever you need to talk about. I haven't looked at a single note card. It's just the bullets remind me of here's what I want to talk about. Right? Look, you see, be comfortable up there. If walking around a little bit helps you, fine. If using your hands, if you're that kind of speaker, fine. Right? Don't go crazy. And while I'm thinking about it, I don't have my clicker out of my backpack right now, but I've had students in class, let's say this is it, and they get the laser beam, right, the little red laser, and they'll do like follow the bouncing ball over their words. Notes are fine and as you start. Don't do that either. That is a super distraction. Okay? Talked about that. Less eye contact, less confidence. You're buried in that mass of words. Keep working. Okay? Speaker's notes. I'll mention that when we get to a couple more things in PowerPoint. We're going to break out of the presentation and just look at some of the nuts and bolts of how PowerPoint works. And yes, I see we're getting up toward 45 minutes, but again, there'll only be the 2 videos, so this one will probably be about 55-ish. Hang in there. Right? I just said you can't for over 45. Tough. Team presentations. Sometimes you're going to get these. In my history class, I do it as 3 or 4 person teams. So what I would do if you're doing a team presentation is get the comm matrix set up, who the people are and how I can get a hold of them, email, phone number for texting. Get that started. And then once you've got that put to bed, look at the topic. And how can we divide and conquer? We've got a 5-person team. Now we've got to cover this big topic. So look at, hey, you cover this, 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 this. Each person gets a piece. Now it's like, okay, well, how do I break that up? One of the ways you can do it maybe historically is by time, sequence of events, but another method is called the editorial method. You're like, what do those letters mean? You've heard it before. Who, what, why, where, when, and how. And that's a way to divide up the topic by that. And if you got a team of 3, each person gets 2. And then somebody does the intro and the conclusion. Now, go off, do your pieces, but that's not the end of a team presentation, because if that's all you do and you stick it together 3 minutes before class, it's going to come out terrible. I see a lot of folks use this, Google Slides, some similar collaborative method. So each time somebody works on it, it changes the overall presentation, right? So that can be very helpful. Put the pieces back together with enough time to look at it, make sure you know who's covering what, and that you practice it a few times through, okay? That little sub-bullet. If you can, get out there and put your presentation up on the screen where you're going to present it. You'd be amazed how much different it looks from here looking at the screen versus up off the projector, right? And you don't want pictures obscuring text, things like that. Who's covering what? One of the things that bugs me is you get a team of 5 up there and they're staring at each other as like, whose slide is this? Now, you guys never practiced this, did you? One of the things you can do, either put like a little initial up in the corner of the slide, or maybe just very subtly, like a light blue, light green, light yellow, a background color that goes from, okay, Bill, Joe, Jenny is each color. So you know who's covering what, and you look like a polished professional team at that point, right? And don't be the weakest link. It's always, oh, so-and-so didn't prepare. This is how I do team presentations. Some may do it differently. A team that does a good presentation and has a weak link or a dud who did nothing, you can get B, 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 F. Because Joe Bag of Donuts over there didn't participate at all. And believe me, that's not hard to define. It's not hard to see it. Most of the time they come and tell you. Okay? It's teamwork. Teamwork is part of life, folks. So don't be the non-participant. Be part of the team. And don't be the one that does it all, right? Because if the rest of them figure out, well, Bill, man, if we just sit on this and don't do anything, he'll put it all together. That's not a good answer either. And if you're Bill, don't do it.
Nervous?
Yes.
First time?
No, I've been nervous lots of times.
You will be nervous. Hey, how'd you make that sound? There are ways to embed sound. There's ways to embed videos. I'll talk about hyperlinking because I think that's probably the easiest at the end. I wouldn't go too crazy with sound, right? How to overcome it. If you know your stuff, which you do because you put these slides together, you should relax. Don't wait till just before class to look at it. And I see students when they're going to present, they're looking at their presentation all the way up until it's their turn. You know your stuff, right? If you need notes and it helps you, fine. Practice, absolutely. Look, embrace the little bit of nervousness, man. We kind of sleepwalk through life half the time. I love sitting on the grid before a race because the butterflies are this big in my stomach. It's like, it makes me feel like I'm alive. A cup of coffee, fine. Don't do 18 Red Bulls before you come in. That's just going to make it worse. And I'm going to skip it. Cool, huh? This is a little bit of repetition, but just to hit a couple. Remember I said I've got a bad background? So here, your introductory slide. Topic, who you are, picture, the date. Oops. Now I get, oh, there we go. Thank you. Oh, he's out of control. So again, something like that. What I'm talking about. Who I am, when it was, who cares? This is the bad one, right? Oh, but I love this picture, but you see how the words just disappear into the dark background. So that's why I like simplicity. And look, some of the PowerPoint backgrounds are fine. Okay. And show. You can look through the rest of this. Here's just a couple more bad examples. Obviously, we don't want that on the screen, right? So can I bulletize it or bold it? No. This is, excerpts from the Declaration of Independence. So what can I do to make that more visible? Do that. Still giving credit down here at the bottom, but that's a whole lot more readable, is it not? And the next one is kind of the same example. There's a thing called the ellipse. It's those three dots. You guys have seen them before. What it does is it says, I purposely took out some of the words here because they weren't necessary to the discussion. So let's say you're using the beginnings of the Emancipation Proclamation. Again, a giant eye chart. So what about that? So you can look at that and go, okay, he took that out. It's still excerpts from the Emancipation Proclamation, but it's a lot easier to read. All right. A conclusion. Here's what you tell them, what you told them. And honestly, it's going to look an awful lot, almost identical perhaps, to the agenda slide because you're hitting those main points once again. Finish your thoughts. Here's what we covered today. And guess what comes next? I put these in there to remind me, all right, are there any questions? Answer the questions. And while that's going on, usually what I'll do is give it a click and that slide comes up. So I'm answering questions while my references sit up on the screen in case anybody wants to jot one down because they're like, well, I need to look at that. That was really good. I'm interested in it. Okay. Right. Let me jump around just a wee bit. If you scroll down to the slides, they're posted in Blackboard. Here's what I was talking about. This would be kind of the template. So you can copy slide 40 through slide 48, copy those and paste them into your own PowerPoint. And I just made this the life of a welder, just an idea. And obviously you would fill in the blank. And if you're going to do cosmetology, the life of a cosmetologist. But it's a basic template as to what you're talking about. And I pulled up a main point 1, types of welding, but look at the agenda. Types of welding. So main point 1, there's oxyacetylene, there's MIG, there's TIG, and then you fill these out. And as you fill them out, this is going to be gibberese, enter. They're set up to go into bullet mode for you. And notice, just like Word, the red line of death, right? Hey, you typed something wrong. Let's see if it gives you, yeah, no suggestions. I have no idea what you're typing. You're a crazy man. Okay? A summary, again, you would fill that out. A question slide so you don't forget, and then your references. So slides 40 to 48 are free for you guys to use and update and just make them work for your presentation. They're ready to go. So let me show you one more thing and then we'll call it a day on this one. The idea of a video. And one of the things I want you to try to do is find a good 2 or 3 minute, make it about 2.5 max, 2 or 3 minute video. And you can use that as part of your summary. A day in the life of an OR nurse. They're out there. There's videos for everything. And so you kind of go, you go through it. Here's what we talked about in your conclusion. And then you play a video that cements it. The other thing it does is the audience has been listening to you talk about being an OR nurse. And then you play a video that talks about the same thing. And they'll go, wow, she talked about all that stuff. That's a pretty good presentation. So it makes for a nice wrap up. Plus the idea is to get you to try to use hyperlinking. What that means is you take something on the page and you link it to a web address. That's all it is. Okay? And you've seen in mine, I tend to use that blue star. So let's go to slideshow mode and let's see how it's just the pointer, and it turns into the finger. And you notice the web address comes up. So that means there's a hyperlink to the star already. Is there one here? No. See, I used a picture of this plug just so we could do one. And then again, if you see bold or a blue and underline, that means there's the link. So let's just see. I have no idea, and I'll do this quick so I don't get a copyright violation. Let's see what we got going. Ah, yes. The How to Get Things Done video. I don't know that they'll bust me for this one. Let's just play because it's really good and it's really short.
All the things that you need to get done are stored all over, in your email inbox, on random pieces of paper, or in your brain. You often forget to do things. You get overwhelmed by big tasks, and overall, your mind feels cluttered. If you want to be a ninja at getting things done, you need a system. Here are some tips. First, collect everything you have to do in one place. This is a big brain dump where you can write down any task that comes to mind. Whenever you think of something you have to do, don't store it in your prefrontal cortex. Write it down. We call this your inbox.
Remember I said if your brain's spinning around at night, that's why I have a notepad next to my bed. That's exactly what I'm doing here.
Next, put things from your inbox into a place you know you will look at the right time. This might be your calendar, a shopping list, or in a project folder. Speaking of projects, if a task can't be done without a series of steps, then you need to turn that task into a project by brainstorming every individual step required to complete that project. Start practicing these simple things, and you'll find that your mind is clear, and you're knocking out tasks one at a time.
Pretty good advice. Excuse me. Ugh. Hairball. Again, I'm flirting with copyright here. Let's say we're going to do a presentation on electric blues and Stevie Ray Vaughan. So let me just pull this up. I'm not going to play it so I don't get in hot water.
Hey, Kevin Bacon
Oh,
here.
and
And I
bloody
want to give
commercials.
you a chance to win a fully restored.
Sometimes what I've started doing more and more of is I'll actually preload my videos so I can blast through the commercials that seem everywhere on YouTube. Okay, so here's the video, and let's say this is what we want to use in our presentation. If you notice, and you guys have seen this, every YouTube video has this kind of wacky web address. Copy it. Now let's go back to our presentation. Remember the outlet didn't have anything associated with it? Click on that image and then right click. And if you go about 2/3 of the way down, see where it says link? Click it. It's going to say, okay, what kind of link do you want there, bonehead? Most of the time what you're going to use is an existing file or web page. We're using that YouTube web page of Stevie Ray Vaughan to help us talk about blues, electric blues. So you go down here into the address, what address do I want, and you paste it in there and hit OK. Now what you can do to check that that worked is go back to slideshow mode and now move this around. Remember there was nothing there? Now it's the finger, right? So let me jump out just so you can see it and I can finish up. I'm going to open that link, just same as I would with the finger. Look what happens. That video that we had pulled up shows up. You hit play. So that's hyperlinking. And I think it's really useful. All you need is internet access, whereas trying to embed or save your own video sometimes can get fouled up. Okay? Right. That's it. I will do one more kind of on money management and health and social media, and that will be the second of just the 2 slides and videos for week 6. So let me shut this one off and I'll see you in, what would it be, video 15, I believe. Well, let me make sure. Yes. Okay, see you then.